Namaskaram. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to this year's very special India Fest and Europe's Margazhi, presented by the Embassy of India Berne and the Swiss Indian Fine Arts Association. So thank you all for coming. It's a profound honor to address you on behalf of a huge team that has worked night and day the last months on both sides to bring this to fruition. As we gather here to celebrate arts and cultures, it just reminds me how deeply and how thoroughly culture and art define us, shape us, not just on stage, but especially off stage, when we are dealing with people, with different people, friends, family, and beyond. And today, I want to reflect on the importance of arts and culture, not just in our personal lives, but also in a way that binds us together, creates a society, creates societies that come together for our greater good. My own story is a reflection of this Swiss-Indian nature of the way we do things. I was born in Switzerland, raised by two parents who are both from India, who were both born in India and emigrated to Switzerland. So at home, I was 100% Indian. As I left the house door, I was 100% Swiss. So the reconciliation of these two cultures has been very important to me from the very first day. And I've had the privilege of being able to grow up and learn and really be enriched by both these fascinating and beautiful and nourishing countries and cultures that I both consider home. As I was growing up, both my mother and father gave a lot and oftentimes put their own dreams and ambitions on hold to ensure that I had a very Indian upbringing, as well as being Swiss, which meant getting up at 5 o'clock in the morning every Sunday and driving 3 hours with public transport in the cold to the only violin teacher that we could find in Switzerland back in the day across 4 cantons, and then coming back in the evening across Switzerland again to find a vocal teacher and then go back home. And so growing up, I've really been able to cherish the importance. And really, as we age now and as we really start living in this world, do we realize how important it is to have not just one culture, but especially if you have multiple cultures, to call home. And learning the instrument has really been the kickstart for me, the connection to my home away from home. Has really been a nourishing journey and one that has opened so many doors and enriched my understanding and been able to connect me with not just other people, but with myself in ways that I didn't think possible. And through all of this, work, not just from me, especially from my parents, all my teachers, these sacrifices really show the power of culture that allow us to connect to our roots. And the unique thing is the power of arts, because they allow us to transcend not just human differences, but borders of countries, of societies, of civilizations across not just space, but also across time. Because we get to connect with one another and we get to enjoy this rare gift that is life in a very enriching way that is both enriching for us as well as for our counterpart. And this ethos is also very deeply reflected in the Swiss and Indian relations. Switzerland and India share a long history together, being one of the first friends as India gained independence, but also through a long tradition and history of shared research, economic activities, cultural exchanges, and so forth. And through all of that, being born in that world and surrounded by such people is what really allowed us to start the Swiss Indian Fine Arts Association that was born not just from us, but from a lot of people who have been working behind the scenes. And this connection and this platform and all of this is really only possible because of all these people. So I really want to thank all of you for taking your time, for coming here, for being part of the performances, part of the audience, part of the stalls outside, supporting us and sponsoring us. So thank you and have a wonderful Margazhi and 2024. And thank you. Have a nice evening. Namaste.
Thank you very much, Ani, for the wonderful speech. We would now like to invite His Excellency Shri Mridul Kumarji, Ambassador of India, to the stage once again to say a few words. Right there, please.
A very good evening, Mr. Aniruddhan Balakrishnan, President of SIFAA, his lovely parents, and I'll talk about them in a short while. We have some very special guests this evening. Ambassador Welty, Dr. Belts, Mayor Pinto, Acharya Bhaskar, Prabhuji, Dr. Pali Chandra, very special friends of India who have come here to be a part of this festival. In India, every day is a festival. We can't live without celebrating the spark of divinity that's called life. And I think we try and find out occasions and excuses to make the best of what Lord has given us. I want to congratulate SIFAA, Aniruddhan and his parents. They came up to me a few months ago with this wonderful idea. And without thinking much, I said, yes, by all means. This is actually my job, but if you are taking it on my behalf, as a Swiss national, nothing better. And I think all of us will agree that when you hear Vedic chantings of this quality from somebody who was born in Switzerland, it really makes you feel very special and happy. Because this is not very often now in India also, that you hear so pure recital of Vedic chants. And I'm happy that Aniruddhan, your family has given you these beautiful values. You told us about your lovely journey. I think culture is one form which really makes you a very complete individual without performing arts, without expressions of what God has bestowed upon all of us. Life is half lived, half done. And for Indians, I think learning one form of the dance or music or arts is a natural upbringing that parents want their children to do. When we were living in Delhi for about 6 years in early 2000, I used to take my elder daughter to Shri Ram Kala Kendra. She was pretty young, about 6-7 years old. And we made it a point that for the next 5 years, till we were there positioned in Delhi, she continued to go there and learn Bharatanatyam, which is a very beautiful form of dance. It not only teaches you to dance, but also to make beautiful posture. You become a very complete individual when you learn one form of Indian dances, very classical ones. So I think dance, music, they are all connecting us to the beautiful primordial sound. We call it Om sound. But I think all things arose from sound. And when this sound is harmonious, melodious, when it comes from music, I think that really makes our life very pleasant and happy. I wouldn't like to keep on talking about, I can continue spending hours speaking about Indian dance and culture, but I think it's better to see the artists who are here. Just winding up, congratulations once again to SIFAA. And I would also be amiss if I don't compliment my team for putting up so much of hard work. My colleague, Mr. Paul, is there, and other colleagues from the embassy. Thank you all for working so hard and making this happen at a short interval. I presume because this is the first time, we are just sort of making some experimentation, but I think with the coming years, this will be becoming into a much bigger, much more beautiful event. God bless you. Enjoy your evening. Much to come, much to look forward to. Thank you.
Thank you, Your Excellency, for your rousing words. We would now like to move on to today's panel discussion on building bridges through art, the role of culture in strengthening Swiss-Indian relations. And while we're getting set up, we would like to talk a bit about what we're doing here today. The six of us, including Ani, are working on creating a magazine to celebrate you, our beloved Indian community based in Switzerland.
And with this magazine, we aim to showcase all of the milestones and achievements of our beloved diaspora community in Zurich.
As part of the magazine, we would like to invite you, our Indian beloved community, to submit your work to us. And if you would like to know any more information, please find any of us after the show.
Now we would like to introduce our panel members. I would like to invite our first panelist, our chief guest, His Excellency Ambassador Shri Mridul Kumarji. A 1992 batch Indian Foreign Service officer, His Excellency has been serving as Ambassador of India to Switzerland and Liechtenstein since June of 2023. Under his tenure, a bilateral trade agreement was signed between India and Switzerland, strengthening economic ties. Previously, he served as High Commissioner to Malaysia and Consul General in Cape Town with extensive diplomatic experience in Europe, Africa, and the Middle East. An electronics engineer by training, he has attended leadership programs at IIM Bangalore and Cambridge University. A multilingual diplomat with varied interests, he enjoys trekking, cricket, painting, and music. Your Excellency, please. Next, we would like to invite our second panelist, the former Swiss ambassador to India and to Iran, His Excellency Mr. Philipp Welti. His Excellency is a seasoned diplomat and geopolitical expert. During his tenure, he also served as political director at the Swiss Defense Ministry, overseeing strategic and security affairs. Now based in Zurich, he focuses on publishing, lecturing, and promoting cultural heritage. Please, Mr. Welti.
And I would like to invite our third panelist, Dr. Johannes Belz, Deputy Director and Curator of South Asian, Southeast Asian Art of the Museum Riedberg. Johannes Belz has chaired its curatorial board since 2009. A scholar specialized in theology and Indian studies. He lectures at the University of Zurich and the Zurich University of Teacher Education. Please, Mr. Belz.
I would like to now invite our fourth panelist, Mr. Jean-Philippe Pinto, Mayor of Wolketswil. Mr. Jean-Philippe Pinto has served as the Mayor of Wolketswil since April 2017. He holds a law degree from the University of Zurich, achieved in 1993, and a Master of Advanced European Studies from the Europa Institute Basel, achieved in 1995. A member of the Zurich Cantonal Council, Mr. Pinto is affiliated with Die Mitte Party.
Up next, we would like to invite our fifth panelist, Acharya Vidya Bhaskarji, head priest at the Omkarananda Ashram in Winterthur. Acharya Vidya Bhaskarji is a distinguished spiritual leader actively fostering interfaith dialogue and cultural exchange. He has globally represented Hinduism at many global forums, including the Vatican, and actively contributes to bridging religious and cultural understanding through his teachings and initiatives. Again, we would like to invite Mr. Vidya Bhaskarji to the stage.
We would now like to invite our sixth panelist, Mr. Damodar Prasad Prabhu, head priest at the ISKCON Temple in Zurich. Mr. Damodar Prasad Prabhu has been the temple president of the ISKCON Temple in Zurich since October 1st, 2021. He actively engages in spiritual leadership and community service, organizing events such as the 50th anniversary of Srila Prabhupada's visit to Switzerland. He also participates in global Kirtan events, exemplifying his dedication to spiritual outreach. Please, Mr. Damodar Prasad Prabhu.
And I would like to invite our seventh panelist. Dr. Bali Chanda is a trailblazer in Kathak, blending traditional and creating innovation across her career spanning over 3 decades. A virtuous performer, educator, and choreographer, she has shaped Kathak's future while empowering 500,000 global learners through digital platforms like Learn Kathak Online. Her groundbreaking work on Gita Govind and philanthropic initiatives reflect her profound commitment to art and community. Please join us.
Yeah, we're very excited to have this first panel discussion with this esteemed array of guests on our days. So please give them a warm round of applause. So on the topic that we've selected today, which is bridging relations through art, I wanted to start with our chief guest, Your Excellency, Ambassador Kumarji. Art and culture have often been seen as bridges between nations. How do you see the role of cultural diplomacy in strengthening ties between India and Switzerland?
Thank you. I personally believe that art and culture are not only bridges. They are actually the very essence of life. Without art and culture, I think we are all very incomplete. Similarly, when we talk about relationship between societies, between states, I think art and culture plays that very vital role in terms of connecting these two entities. If you look at Switzerland and India, of course, and I can speak from a very wide perspective. I was in charge of Gulf area for about 6 years in my country. There was this remarkable transition in our relationship with that area. We had a very transactional relationship, very healthy, happy one, but there was no kind of essence of that beauty in that relationship. And when I reached there, one of the things that I talked about to my leadership is they eat the same bread. They don't eat noodles. I mean, when you talk about art and culture, when you talk about habits, the ways you live, I think the kind of similarity that you can come across, and even if it is not similar, even if there are divergences into it, and you see a commonality in that divergence, then the connect becomes much more stronger. You look at Switzerland, for example, and I'll give you a very small, wonderful insight into what Dr. Beltz introduced me to about our relationship. And I was not aware of that. So there's a thing called Andian. Have you heard of that word, India? Andian? INDIENNES. This is the Indian cotton. In the 16th century and the 17th century, he presented me a book about that entire history. And Indian cotton and the motifs on the cotton, they were all pieces of masterpieces of art. And the kind of painting that you do on it, the kind of fast coloring that you do on it. And Indian artists have mastered it 500 years ago. And we were the leaders, global leaders in that. And the entire subsequent history of colonialism, about how the cotton trade got shifted from India to Manchester and the rest of the story. I will not like to go into that. But the point I'm trying to make is, when the King of France, Louis XIV, decided with the pressure of the local, because Indian fabric was very famous and very sought after in Europe in 16th century, before imperialism started actually. The local wool and silk industry in France was getting hammered. And the king decided to ban the cotton products. Now this is again very interesting. The entire industry shifted to Switzerland. And all the artists, all the manufacturers, they came here, they started continuing importing. And in fact, there's a company called Volkart Brothers. It became one of the leading companies on the global stage, based in Winterthur, very small area, you know about it. A small area, small company grew into a global conglomerate just because of that beautiful art connection. So art is not only about how do you express yourself, art is also about how do you live. And this very deep connect which people generally ignore. Trade and commerce is also a part of the art that you can see. I personally believe that way. So I think there is a very deep connect between India and Switzerland, and art is one medium. I can continue to talk about it later on once we hear from the other panelists, but just to whet your appetite about how deep our connection is, a small country like Switzerland making one of the largest conglomerate on the global stage by a single commodity, which was primarily based on how Indians saw motives, how Indians saw art, and how that art got transformed into what you are wearing and what we are all wearing. So that's a very beautiful story that I think is worth remembering and worth telling the Indian and Swiss businesses. Now again, to make it my talk complete, the agreement that we have signed very recently in March, I think this will again provide that kind of a strong link that had established 500 years ago between our two countries in terms of exchanges, and art will again become a lovely medium for our exchanges. Thank you.
Thank you very much. So, thank you for your wonderful insight. Building on that, seeing how with this new bilateral agreement, you say that trade as a part of art will start flowing a lot more between Switzerland and India. I was curious to hear Mr. Pinto's opinion as a local politician and member of the parliament. How is it from your point of view? Where does arts play a role in yours, and how do you see how you could support it with local initiatives?
Namaskar. It is great to be here on this very special occasion. And as Mr. Ambassador said, culture is one of the fundaments of bringing people, bringing countries together. And Switzerland and India share lots of common values. Democracy is one of the biggest values. India, the biggest democracy in the world, and Switzerland, one of the oldest democracies in the world. And we share also common, I'm saying India, diverse country, lots of languages, lots of religions, people living peacefully together. Same thing in Switzerland on a much smaller scale. And I think culture and soft power is here, the word, is very, very important. Soft power really is for this world with all the problems essential. And I think politicians, I can tell you, like hard power. But soft power is the way how to do it. And just to start here in Switzerland, one of the typical things which always happens, and you must have seen that, the word apero, which in Switzerland is absolutely basic for any occasion. And the reason behind that is, if you drink a glass of wine together, it brings people together. And I think that's the key basic thing in this world, which is partly shifting apart, that we have to find a way to each other. And I think that's very, very important. And I think culture, and I'm not speaking only of culture, for me sports, as you know now, the chess world championship is going on in Singapore, and millions of people are watching that in India. And I say that is also, sports brings countries together. Cricket, India versus Pakistan, politics cannot do that, but sports can do that. And same thing is culture. I think it's very important. When the Chinese Prime Minister came to India some few years ago, the Indian Prime Minister welcomed him in Malibapuram, and that was very important because the Chinese had been there many, many years ago. And this is the way how politics has to deal with such subjects. And it means you have to find a common ground. And when politicians meet, you always try to find a common base to start the discussions. Political discussions are very, very hard. But without finding a common culture, a common way of dealing with the subject, of also understanding the other side, you can never find a way how to deal with these serious problems today in this world. And that's why, for me, culture is very important. And I must also say, like you, I'm born and bred here in Switzerland. And when my parents came here, 1964, winter 1964, I can tell you the winters before were much colder than they are today. Switzerland was completely a different country, very conservative, only Swiss living here. And it was really, today, Zurich, if you see, is a vibrant city. Switzerland has changed a lot in the past years. And that makes it today much easier. My parents had a very, very difficult start. Even though we are Christians, it made it easier. But still, to find friends and people here was very, very difficult. What did they do? They joined the local church, Catholic church here. They joined the choir. Like that, you met people, you bring culture together. And I think it's very important. India and Switzerland have got lots of common things, and for the future, we have to build up on this culture.
Thank you very much. It was interesting that you mentioned religion as part of a culture that brings people together. And of course, as you saw today, we opened with a Vedic chanting. The Indian dance and music are often about Hindu deities and Indian ways of life. So I would be very curious to hear, Acharya Vidya Bhaskarji, your take on how these ancient ways of life still define us and how they can be employed and used today to build these connections and be put in the modern context of building bridges.
Thank you very much. Also, thank you to the organizers. As part of various organizations, I know it is not easy to organize, so it is always forgotten by everyone, so a wonderful effort. So a very interesting question, and perhaps one interesting observation that Switzerland has not really produced many great thinkers and philosophers, except one, in my opinion, and his name is Carl Gustav Jung, the founder of depth psychology. So the gentleman, you disagreed, but there are not many. Switzerland is excellent at hosting thinkers and hosting philosophers, such as Goethe and so on, but producing them, not so much. Now, what many people don't know is that Carl Gustav Jung had a deep association with India. He traveled to India, he met great masters in India, spiritual masters such as the Shankaracharya of Kanchipuram, and also had some association and correspondence even with Ramana Maharshi of South India, and developed his model of the self as the center, the core of our personality, based on Upanishadic wisdom. This is not my invention. This is it's not just an idea. It is really true. If you study the works of Jung, you will see that connection. And he loved the Indian idea of the mandala or the yantra as a symbol of the self, the personality structure that we have. So this is one example. He also was the first individual in history to host a seminar on Kundalini Yoga in Switzerland. Also less known. Very fascinating that there was this search for wisdom and how to transfer that wisdom to a global audience. So there's one remark I wanted to make, something to explore deeper. And in fact, it is his psychological views today that are more relevant to modern psychology than that of his, we could say his mentor, Sigmund Freud. So Jung is more respected today, is more appreciated. So this is one area to explore. So definitely ancient Indian wisdom is very much relevant to the current world. Then if you look at the whole field of mindfulness, mindfulness is just a fancy word for meditation. Because people didn't like the word meditation anymore, so we had to come up with a better word. Right? It's a euphemism for meditation. So that really has made an incredible impact. I remember in 2015 or 16 or so, I was in Davos at the World Economic Forum, and I actually chanted Sri Suktam there. And then in the morning, the session started with mindfulness meditation. It was very impressive to see world leaders sitting there and trying to observe their mind. And I thought, wonderful, right? This is the impact of the ancient Indian sages. So yes, there are quite a few fields. Then another one is consciousness studies. Consciousness is the most important reality that we speak about in the ancient Indian philosophical tradition, and consciousness studies has seen a big surge in recent times. So it is again something that I think is not yet over, think in 50 years there will be a deeper understanding of consciousness, and it will be even more aligned with the ancient Indian understanding. So I don't want to bore you with this. We have actual experts here because it's about art also, right, and culture. But just one last small anecdote. My son is now 11 years old, and recently he was asked at his primary school to lead a 50-minute class on Sanskrit, because I teach him Sanskrit. And in just 2 days, he prepared himself, and then he gave to, I think, 22 children, he gave a whole 50-minute session on Devanagari, how to write their names in Devanagari, to Swiss children, how to write their names, and then even how to say, Mama Nama is so-and-so, Tava Nama Kim, you know, so it was wonderful. So there's also the openness of Switzerland to other cultures. So thank you very much.
Thank you for that. That's actually very fascinating that 11-year-old, your son is able to teach it and do it in school. It really speaks volumes about how open Switzerland has been, sitting as a landlocked nation between these much bigger powers, and how they've been able to maintain peace and harmony for so long. Speaking of Switzerland being so open, I think one of the best examples is the Museum Riedberg, which is a very prominent museum in Zurich, that has for decades now hosted not just big exhibitions, but also concerts and all kinds of museum pieces from India, and really done their part really well in connecting India and Switzerland. So I'd be curious to hear your take and maybe your thoughts on this, Dr. Belz, on the role of art, how you see it from the perspective of a museum.
Thank you for bringing me here, inviting me and giving me the possibility to talk, and congratulations for this beautiful event. The Museum Riedberg has a long history with India, as you all know, and right from the beginning. And I joined the Museum Riedberg in the early 2000s, and I'm a migrant. I come from East Germany, which is a neighboring country which doesn't exist anymore. But I see an important change, and not only in Zurich, as you mentioned, but also in the museum. And in regard to India, I would like to mention that we show now at this very moment an exhibition on Ragamala paintings. And it's a very innovative, interesting, immersive exhibition. I would like to invite you to see it. But what I would mention here, what I want to mention is that this exhibition was curated by Sonika Soni. I'm the head of the project, but she gave the content. And this is for the first time that we have an Indian curator curating an exhibition, it's a major exhibition in our institution. And I think this is significant. There's a shift from we are much more inclusive and bringing experts from India, art historians, to work with us. We encourage partnerships, and the Riedberg went to India on several occasions to do an exhibition. Since I joined the museum, we did, my first show in India was, I think, in 2014, and at the National Museums, 2 shows, in Mumbai, 1. So this kind of interaction and engagement is, I think, very important, and I see this very positively. However, and I'm glad that your speakers mentioned how important culture is for you as a politician and a diplomat. However, I would challenge your take on that a little bit. If I would see that more in our museum practice, and I would be very happy. In fact, what I face is that culture is an international diplomacy and politics, local, international, not the number one. It comes after business and after politics, etc. So I'm so glad that you think it should be more important. So I'm looking forward to see that. And from my experience, I would say it's rather that culture is not the first thing we talk about when we meet. So that's maybe something to talk about and to take it from this evening, and I would be very happy.
So thank you. It's very interesting to hear your perspective as a museum and having been dealt in this relation between, let's say, Europe or German-speaking parts of Europe and India, which also goes back a very long time. I was curious to hear what Dr. Pali Chandra would think as an international artist who has leveraged, your art and your technology as a global voice to not only propagate culture but also bring people together using your platform and your brand. So I'd be interested in hearing what your take is on the power of art in bringing people together.
Arts and culture, yes. Personally, I feel culture is something that you don't have to belong to. Wherever you are, you can adapt and adopt it. So wherever you are, you can create your own arena to be a part of that culture. And this I happened to learn from my guru who inspired me with his life legacy that he left with us. Indian culture is mostly about tradition. But he told me that tradition is valuable only when it's in transition. You adapt it. He was someone who did not belong to the Indian subcontinent at that point of time. He was living in England. He went to Colombo to study and then came to Calcutta to go to study medicine in London again. And he just fell in love with the Indian culture. And he became one of the exponents of the art form. So that gave me the light that you don't have to be born in a culture. You can just be a part of any culture if you want to. Now, how do you do that is what I think is something that is very important for us to understand, which comes from our tradition. In classical dance, what we follow is the Natya Kramaha, the first chapter, which says, is at par with quantum laws as well. The science says so too. It says, yato hasta tato drishti, yato drishti tato manaha, yato manaha tato bhava, yato bhava tato rasa, which means wherever the hands go, the eyes follow. Wherever the eyes are is where the manaha is. Where there is concentration, new things are born. And when something new is born, then rasa comes. So the real essence of life is the rasa. But what Guruji taught us is, rasa is not just the essence or the nectar. Unless you have the rasik or the audience to talk with you, to communicate, to Q&A, to create a conversation, nothing, whether it is art, science, politics, economics, nothing makes sense unless there is reciprocity. So for me, art is nothing but reciprocity, and you can be born anywhere and belong to any other. I remember my husband was traveling everywhere, and it was like, where am I going to be paying my taxes next time? Where am I going to be? Was my. And then when I gave up, I said, you know what? Even if you go to the North Pole, I will train and choreograph the penguins. This is what art form gives you. The idea and the ideology to be a part of where you breathe and you grow.
Thank you very much. Talking about adopting culture and making yourself where you are, I'd be interested to hear your perspective on it, Damodarji, on adopting culture, and also I think in adopting culture you are essentially validating its strengths beyond time and space and getting it together. So that would be interesting to hear from you.
Thank you very much for the invitation. Thank you for the organization, for this wonderful program. Yeah, you were asking how adopting culture, and you were mentioning also in the beginning how culture can transcend not only places but time. And I was just reading there on this advertisement celebrating Indian culture, and I was wondering, why am I at a festival for Indian culture? I never planned to be at a festival for Indian culture. But I adopted the culture. But I guess if I'm asked, why did I adopt Indian culture, my answer would be I adopted Vedic culture. And in that sense, I go back in time, where the Vedic culture, which now might be called Indian culture, was a universal culture, and still is a universal culture. And as we can see, I'm wearing a so-called Indian dress, which also is a Vedic dress. Why? Because our teachers taught us that Vedic culture doesn't have anything to do with a nationality, a place. It has to do with consciousness. And whoever is conscious can adopt Vedic culture. And we also see, when we study Vedic culture, that Vedic culture is universally seen all over the world, the different aspects. And we know from the study of languages that we speak about the Indo-Germanic languages. So they have often the same root. Like the languages have the same root. German is coming from the same root. Hindi is coming from the same root. English is coming from the same root. All the cultures, they're coming from the same essential root. And in that way, the different manifestations of culture, they're different, but they're essentially the same. They try to express or provoke the same in human, but in a different way. So, in that sense, I adopted Vedic culture, and we can also call it Indian culture today. But as I said, if we take the universal approach, that this is culture is universal and it's found everywhere and it's basically the same source, then I think we can build a bridge between all these different cultures and arts we find in the world. Hare Krishna.
Thank you very much. That was definitely a distinction that needs to be made and needs to be considered and imbibed more. I would be curious now to hear, actually we have an incredible coincidence with Your Excellency, Mr. Philippe Boati, also having been the Swiss ambassador of India, so essentially from the opposite side, but also being the Swiss ambassador to Iran. So, in some sense, also this relationship between Switzerland and India and a good understanding of the Middle East and the wider world. I'd be interested in hearing your perspective from the Swiss perspective on the importance of culture and arts bridging.
Thank you very much for inviting me. What a pleasure to be in a surrounding which I used to experience often in India. I got invited often in India in my official capacity, and now I find myself again in such a surrounding. Fond memories. As an ambassador, and this is valid for all ambassadors worldwide, you have two main duties, topics, fields where you have to act, that is politics and economics. And then arts, cultural activities comes in as a third, sometimes just optional, depending on the budget. And in my case, I did what I had to do in the field of politics and economics, but I have a personal inclination towards cultural activities, which I had in Iran already, and could do a lot just for my pleasure, I must say. And I had the intention to repeat my happy experiences in Iran. Now, which ended up to be a very profound and rich experience, but it was very different. Now you wanted, I did not know that you expected me to come up with a lecture on Iran versus India, but I can, at any time, but I will shorten it, okay? So the big difference in the cultural field for me, living outside politics, is Iranians have a strong cultural identity, long history, everything is strong, everything is present, but they have today, the people today, they have a strong inclination towards Europe. They love European culture, they love Europeans, somehow, not everybody, but... And when I went on to India, which was then the following mission, I found out that the Indians, they do not need so much from Europe. They have a culture, their own culture, which represents a very strong identity. They have no inclination to ask Europeans what is art. They have their own. And since I'm a musician, I was very interested in knowing more, getting involved in in Indian culture, Indian music. But it was difficult, but I learned a lot. But what I want to do here now is I stop my lecture and bring in some happy memories, which concern culture too. India's artistic identity, cultural identity is very strong, as I said, but you don't need the rest of the world. You are a world on your own. But now you have produced, over the last 50 years, a very specific cultural export. I'm talking about Bollywood. That is of immense importance, also for Switzerland. I happen to get to know in India the big name of Bollywood, Yash Chopra, late Yash Chopra, great man. And he is of particular importance and relevance for Switzerland, for Swiss-Indian relations and Switzerland as well. He, so to say, single-handedly brought millions of Indian tourists to Switzerland through his films. Great man, yes, you can. I pay tribute to this man, and from his people around him, there were always a lot of people around him, I got to hear that he had been honored for his achievements from the Swiss side, for the benefits we could take out of his films. He was honored by tourism organizations, by cultural associations, by film institutions, and everybody, but he resented it a bit. I was told this very discreetly. He resented it that the official Switzerland had never acknowledged his achievements. So I decided then to do that, to catch up for the state, for my country, my government. And I created a Swiss Ambassador Award, which I bestowed for the first edition in 2010 on Yash Chopra. And out of the ceremony for awarding, of giving him the award, as a recognition, we organized a big ceremony, a big party. We have a big garden in the residence in Delhi, wonderful place. Together with his office, and then we produced a big stage with cultural activities, dance, music, and everything, and the medley of his films. It was a tremendous party. And now comes in my very personal pretension as a musician. I opened the cultural program by playing on the stage without orchestra, just me, trumpet. I played the most famous Bollywood song. That was a big success. wonderful, heartwarming for me. But the funny thing is that after that, during all my time, I got many invitations for all sorts of associations, meetings, even Rotary clubs and that sort of people. Everybody. And they always said, could you please bring along your trumpet? Which I did a few times. So you see, that is a very fond memory I keep from India. And I thought that's the right place to remember, not me as a trumpet player, but to remember late Yash Chopra. Please remember, he's a great man. He did a lot for India-Switzerland relations, cultural relations.
Thank you very much. And please note, next time we will invite you with your trumpet. You will have to play next time. Yeah, I thought we can open up the discussion. I thought the point that Mr. Beltz had, but the discussion is springing forth by some.
It's a round table discussion, so we should provoke a discussion and not repeat what everyone said before. So I would like to come back to this, the point when you said, and we do culture as diplomats when we have money. If you go to the website of the Swiss Foreign Service and Foreign Ministry, you will find that Switzerland is very active and defined its foreign policy, business relations, humanitarian help. But you will not find the term culture. Culture is not in the vision of what the foreign ministry wants to do. So I think this is interesting. And also from my experience with working with local governments in Switzerland and politicians, culture is not the first thing you would be asked to invest in and to join. It's something which you do if you have some money left over in the end. I provoke a discussion, right? So to make it a little bit more controversial. So can I pass it on?
Thank you very much. The one thing is, seeing now the free trade agreement between Switzerland and India, which has been ratified just now in Bern. You are absolutely correct. The word culture, I don't think is mentioned once. That is the case, but it is my firm belief that even business will bring people together and generate at the end also cultural trade, cultural relationship between both countries. And one thing is, we heard before, people came here for Bollywood movies. Lots of Indians travel to Switzerland, but very few Swiss go for tourism to India. And I think it is from the past, from the mass media, which created a certain picture of India here in Switzerland, in the entire Western world. A poor country, bureaucracy, very difficult of going there, and there was a certain time where only bad news was mentioned here in Switzerland, and I think that has changed in the past. The people are getting aware through globalization, through internet. I mean, I must say it is really fantastic. 2 days ago, there was a concert in Goa, and I could watch it through YouTube and all that. I mean, that was not possible 20 years ago. And I think that is today bringing people together, giving a different picture of India. And also now there are much more flights from India to Switzerland, or India started now also flights. And I'm just saying that will give also Swiss a chance to go to India. Why do Swiss prefer to go to Thailand and not to India? That is a question which we will have to discuss. Thailand has got 10 times more Swiss tourists than India. And that is the point. India has got a fantastic culture. Has got, I would say, much more than Thailand has got, without offending anyone. But I'm saying these things have to be done. And I think it's important also for India, for the Indian embassy, to show the picture. What can you do in India? To also try to help tourists to go to India, visit the cultural things. When I go to India sometimes and see museums, I must say, my God, what are you showing? Things ancient with a small thing written there. Today, things are technical. You have to show, you have to even give children the possibilities to use those things. And I think things have to change, and then the Swiss will go to India. Culture will be vice versa. And I think globalization is a big chance for both countries. And I'm saying that because from a political perspective, at this moment, knowing governments are changing everywhere, and governments are looking only for themselves, for their own country, and we have to keep on globalization because globalization gives everyone a chance. And I think India and Switzerland profited a lot from globalization.
I think it's a very important point what Dr. Belz has raised. How do you see culture? Now, from a very Indian perspective, I'd like to talk about something much more deeper. When we talk about Indian culture, is there something called Indian or is there something called Indian culture? I would call it Sanatani. And Sanatani goes beyond time and space. So it is not dependent on Kal or Desh, as we call it. Now, what it means is you have got a certain way of looking at things, a certain way of appreciating how this entire creation happened and how the cosmic dance that Lord Nataraja had, which created the music, the essence of music and the essence of dance. Why music is so nice to hear? It's a universal language. So is it culture? When something is universal, it is not to be defined as Indian culture or Western culture or this or that. I think this is transcending beyond that common understanding of the definition of culture. First point I want to make. If you look at Indian perspective again, we call it philosophy. The Vedic way of looking at things is when I have understood the essence of what has happened, why I am here, what is my purpose, all these questions. So India is a land where all these questions were raised, asked, and cogitated upon by people for thousands of years. We had a very rich land. Things were plenty. You don't need to sort of work hard to get your bread. And when you have got everything given by the nature and the God, then you go much deeper into music, arts, culture, science and everything. And when you go fine into anything, you will find there is a connectivity. So when all things, whether it is science, we call it science, arts, commerce, no, they're all connected. At the end of the day, arts is as much as science is as much as maths. So all the things are connected. And if you look at the Vedic philosophy, you'll find that there are 6 darshanas. We don't call, philosophy means love for wisdom. Now wisdom is all associated here. But when you look, darshana is to look at. So we have got 6 darshanas, which are the 6 philosophies from the Indian's perspective. And we don't call it the wisdom of mind because we think that the mind is only a small instrument. And when we talk about the larger connectivity, the interconnected of thoughts, people and everything. And when we are dealing with, as an individual politicians or bureaucrats, I think we have to find, because we are talking about hard language, we have to find softer ground, as you were mentioning earlier. And this softer ground is provided by that interconnectivity. Now, when Indian culture is there, so to say, it not only talks about, oh, I have a great mind, I am a great thinker. No, we talk about how do I see. And so there are 6 darshanas, and depending on your constituency, all individuals are have different constituencies. And depending on your constituency, you look at things in a different way. But these things are not different, by the way. You are looking at it differently. So this is the darshan of it. But then eventually, if you are able to transcend beyond the locality, so to say, you will see that interconnection. So what, as diplomats, and again, the moot point is, why should we put culture as the last priority? When culture becomes the essence of doing everything on the planet. I mean, all my basic stuff that I want to carry out as diplomat, the first thing that should come to my mind is, how do I connect with Professor Belz, or how do I connect with Mayor Pinto? And where I can find that common ground where this connection may lead to making business with them. And this is an honest, mutually respectful, beneficial business. So I think if you again look at culture from my perspective, Indian perspective, this is all-encompassing. It is not restricted to a particular thought or a particular way of looking at things. It's much, much beyond. It's about, if you look at my phone, it says Tattvam Asi. So in my DP, I have put Tattvam Asi. So I see Lord in you. I see the ultimate consciousness in you. And so is the other way around. You also see the ultimate consciousness in me. And when we see that we all are same part of the same consciousness, it means somewhere down the line, we're all connected in that sense. And I think our two colleagues from, again, I will not call it religion because religion is dogmatic. I call it faith. This is how you look at things. This is how you believe truth has come about. So when you look at truth and you find all truth is same, and art, music, science, maths, they're all manifestations of understanding of that larger truth. Then I think we are on the same page. Otherwise, we'll keep on arguing about my culture, your culture, this thing, that thing.
Sure. The way I see culture, because culture is so transient, it's now. So tomorrow it's not going to be like this. So we need to save it and grow with it. So digitalization is something that is mandatory. We need to save it, preserve it, and give the original format to the present. Many of my dancers come together and I'm saying, show me something traditional. Now, two of my dancers have just landed at the airport and they've come here directly. Yeah? One from America, one from India. And I say, show me something very traditional. They say, we don't have anything traditional. What is traditional? We don't know because kuch solid nahi hai. And I'm like, okay, so then it is our responsibility to give them something solid so that they can make something out of it. So the raw materials should be provided and it should be digitalized and made accessible. If we don't make it accessible and we keep it in the museums in a very unprotected way, in a way that you come and take your own knowledge the way you want to, rather than have exhibitions where people come and talk about it, we have dancers who are standing in that position as the sculpture is and then talking why this statue was made, how it was made, how it can be changed, what is the body alignment here. All these things have to be linked together. So architecture, sculpture, performing arts, music, everything, as you said, is connected, has to be documented and made accessible. We don't have access to it. This is something there that's really lacking.
So I would like to add to this and replying to your, so my request would be, we signed the free trade agreement and we are looking to great collaborations, but after hearing all that, we should enable cultural exchange. And for that, we need scholarships and artistic residencies, we need collaborations of institutions, universities, museums, and I would be happy to see that in the future. I doubt, to be honest. The science and what I see at the moment is not very encouraging. But I think that would be wonderful if we go into this direction, because we seem to agree that culture is not something to add on, some goodies you get in the end, but it's the basis of our relations, our lives, and how we live together, how we work, how we gain our money, how we educate our children. And I wonder, whether we shouldn't turn it around. We do business if we have enough money in the end. But let's talk about what is the fundamental questions of our existence.
So maybe to drop a small metaphor, culture is not the main content of the sandwich. It's the bread, without which you don't have a sandwich. So I would like, maybe before we open it up to a short Q&A, maybe starting with Damodarji, if you could pretend that the mic is a magic wand, and with one tap, anything you want can happen in terms of strengthening, relations, not just between Switzerland and India, but in general amongst the world, using arts and cultures, what would your one wish be? Yeah. So, if you can make one wish in the realm of using arts and culture as a tool, what's one thing you wish?
Okay, so I can elaborate a bit. Yeah, I was just thinking when hearing about the initial statement of His Excellency Mr. Kumar, how you said that you feel culture is the most important in life. It's not just a sighting, and also you just mentioned it's the bread what actually makes it. And then we also heard how in diplomacy, or I don't know much about your profession, but when you have a budget, culture always comes in the very end. Did I understand correctly? More or less. So, but we deal with economy, we deal with money, politics. And what comes to my mind there is, in the Vedic teachings, they speak about the 4 Purusharthas: Dharma, Artha, Kama, Moksha. So Dharma means religious principles, universal religious principles. Artha means economy, Kama means the satisfaction of our needs, and Moksha means liberation. And it seems when we hear these comments that in the modern world that has shifted a bit, that Artha is in the beginning, and then if we come to the others, then we'll do, otherwise we'll just drop it. But the Vedic scriptures, they say there is a reason why we have to put them in that sequence, because we don't have unlimited time here. And if we put Dharma in the beginning, then we will understand that by following Dharma, Artha, Kama, Moksha will be taken care of by itself. It's like a natural consequence that comes out of Dharma. And Dharma includes culture. We can see in history, culture has often been connected to religion, spirituality, Dharma. So if we put Dharma in the very beginning, then we can strengthening the culture again in this world. And if we have time, we'll do some business, some economy, otherwise we'll just minimize it to the absolute minimum.
Mr. You can just pass on the magic wand.
Well, the Sanskrit word for culture is Sanskriti, and it's very interesting to look at the meaning. It comes from the prefix sam, which means to make whole, to be whole, and karoti, to make. So it means to be, to make whole. And it is related to sanskara also, which begins in the Indian Vedic culture, begins in the womb. So the first sanskara is in the womb. When the baby is in the mother's womb, the blessings are invoked for the baby's growth and well-being, and then we run through the entire life with 16 sanskaras, ways of making us whole. Yes, and that is the word Sanskriti. So culture, and also from Latin, to cultivate, culture, cultivating oneself. So yes, it is related to pleasure. In fact, I would say culture is more on the Kama side, not so much Dharma, if we look at the 4, pleasure, but it's also related in cultivating oneself, cultivating one's emotions, what you said before, the rasa is at the end of the process, cultivating our minds, our hearts, and also the greatest strength. And I was really thinking strongly, should I say it, should I not say it? But let me please say it, and I hope nobody is offended in any way, that the greatest strength of Indian culture has always been its plurality and diversity. And I would strongly suggest to also include Islamic culture as part of Indian culture. Yes, of course, Indian culture is Vedic in its origin and in its framework and so on, but still, we should consider also the great works of the Islamic history that we see in India today, and to see it as whole, because that's the word, culture is whole. So that will really present India again as that very diverse, pluralistic nation that we love so much. Yes, so I hope nobody is offended by that. Of course, I come from the Vedic background, but it is just something to remark. So thank you very much.
Thank you. I would like to remind the audience of one more aspect of culture, that is the culture in popular traditions. I mentioned, in case of India, I mentioned Ganesh Chaturthi, Mumbai, Dussehra in Rajasthan or in Mysore. These beautiful, wonderful events, always very colorful in India and loud and noisy. One tends to see that as exclusive events, exclusive for the region, for the place, for the local culture or so, but they are not. They are expression of something much more broader, which is, you can call it holistic understanding of mankind, of being human. And if you endeavor to look into those popular traditions and look around and think of your own popular traditions in Switzerland, anywhere else, Europe, you can discover the similarities which indicate how much we all have in common, even if the big parties do say look so different from a Sechseleuten in Zurich. And that was fascinating for me during my time in, I went to Mysore, I went to all these places to see these popular traditions. And when I came home for good, I like to publish, a booklet about these similarities between Swiss and some Indian popular tradition, German, English. So everybody could read it. I have a few copies. This is for you, Mr. Ambassador. That's all for me. Thank you.
Just once before we move on, where can we find this book?
In his house.
In his house. Okay.
Sorry?
Where can we find this book? Can it be bought on?
If you ask me, I will give you one.
And the trumpet performance.
I have a few copies.
And just, it's interesting you mentioned Dussehra and Sechseleuten, because both of them have a big statue that blows up and loses its head.
All that in the booklet.
Okay.
It's about the magic wand. In my house, when we celebrated the signing of TEPA, and I invited Federal Councillor and many other senior officials from the Swiss government, I made sure that we all danced. And we danced on Bollywood tunes. And I said to them, I coincided it with Holi, by the way. So I told them that when anybody comes to my house, and there are 3 colleagues from the embassy, and they will vouch for what I'm saying, I tell everybody who comes to my house that there is a tax that you have to pay when you get entertained in my house. And that tax is you have to either dance or do some singing. So my commerce minister came in July, and he was hosted by Federal Councillor Guy Pamelan, and Federal Councillor told him that your ambassador has the best dance floor in entire Switzerland. So you can see that I'm using my magic wand to make sure that the thing that we all have common, happiness, the pursuit of happiness, so to say, we do it through a variety of means. Secondly, an important point that you made, sir, about Islam. If you look at India, I think there is a country which has an extraordinary syncretic culture. You have to really go slightly deep into what I'm saying, and you can only experience it. I mean, people can talk about all kind of nonsense things, about how we look at religion and how we are divided and how we are united. But if you go to dargahs, Sufi dargahs, in Ajmer or in Delhi, Nizamuddin, and you will see the songs that they play while praying for Paigambar Muhammad or for Allah. These are all songs about the Hindu culture. They talk about Krishna and Lord Krishna's love for Radha. And ultimately this love is the love that you have for your Lord at the end of the day. So India has a very extraordinary syncretic culture. I can tell you from my own experiences. I have 2 daughters, and when they turned 16, I took them to Dargah, Nizamuddin Dargah. It is my favorite place. We go there late in the evening, 10 o'clock, 11 o'clock, during the festival period, and we listen to the music. As music fills you with ecstasy, I assure you, if you have a little bit of connection with your inner soul, or inner consciousness, you cannot come out without crying. So I made sure that my 2 daughters had their 16th birthday, not in a hotel or partying with their friends, but at a dargah listening to qawwalis from Islamic tradition. So this much is the strength of our syncretic culture. There are commentaries about what's happening in India, but I think most of it is exaggerated. You have to go and see for yourself in Ajmer Sharif or in Nizamuddin. You will have all kind of face coming there, enjoying those beautiful songs and qawwalis.
Thank you for mentioning the plurality of India and culture. And this is something which we try to practice and to show and share with our audiences in the museum. And we do performances of dance, music, and we just had last Sunday a concert where Iqbal Hussain from Pakistan played together with a tabla player from India. And I see, that this is a very good example of how culture can cross borders and frontiers and bring people together. And we had exhibition and collect objects from the so-called tribal arts in India. And we had a huge textile collection of textile works which were made by, what we would say, Dalits. So I think culture embraces all strata of society and brings people together, and it's something we have to cherish and this is our mission, and that's what we are doing. And you asked me what would be my wish. I would love to see a chair of Indian art history to be created at the University of Zurich. Why not? I don't know whether you're aware, but unfortunately, if you go to the German-speaking Europe, the chairs of Indian art history have been disappearing over the years. Because it's a kind of, small topic with one professor, not many students, and it's very sad. And I think it's the moment, seeing all what we have been talking about, to have a good wish, and maybe some things happen. Who knows? Thank you.
Thank you. I think culture is very, very broad. And if you have said before to create one chair for Indian art, I would say you have to create a chair for Indian culture, because the culture is not only traditional. Lots of people think the Indian culture is very traditional. I always say the modern Indian culture is very important. Punjabi MC, music, modern films in India, modern technology which comes from there. I think those things have got a rather small space everywhere. People consider India a very traditional, conservative country, but I say India is a vibrant, modern country, and those things have to come here. See the Goa parties, being from Goa. Zurich is one of the biggest places worldwide with Goa parties, but very few people know that this comes originally from India. So I'm just saying those things we have to really go on. We have to do more advertisement for these things. We have to really go out and really say that. And I think that's very, very important. And that's why I say something, for me, culture is very broad. We have to really export culture. We have to bring people together. And then I'm sure that India will have a very important position here in Switzerland. Food. If you see how many Indian restaurants have opened in the past years, if you see how many Indians are in Switzerland and how many Chinese are in Switzerland, there are much more Indians today than Chinese, but there are much more Chinese restaurants than there are Indian restaurants. And those things, and that's why I say we have to think broader. And I think education is a very, very important step. I can remember when I went to Chandigarh, I was interested to see the things built by Corbusier, a Swiss. And the people asked me, are you architect? I said, no, I'm lawyer. Why are you interested in architecture? I think that thinking, the Indian thinking, if you study architecture, you're all interested in that. We have to get more open up, broaden up. And I think it's important also, and that was said before, the Indian culture and modern has to also be transported into the Swiss education, Swiss schools. We have to show more that India is not that what it was 30, 40 years ago. Today, the modern India is vibrant, and years ahead, next century is going to be an Indian century.
I totally resonate with you. When it comes to education, I think this magic wand should give me my wish, which is globally, every student should be educated in culture, not just biology, chemistry, and maths and arithmetic. And this subject should be mandatory up to post-graduation. We start learning about cultures in primary schools, and we swap and we have these fancy dress arrangements and food stalls and such India festival and Mexican festival, so on and so forth. But as we grow, somehow the seriousness of other subjects gets stronger, and we end up not treating or giving respect to our culture and tradition the way it was as our primary schools did. So it should be mandatory, a subject which you have to clear up to a much later, not just an extracurricular activity. It shouldn't be an extracurricular, it should be mandatory. You have to study your culture. You have to pass.
We have in the canton of Zurich, we have a mandatory subject. It's religions, cultures, ethics. And that is from a primary to secondary school, so we have that. I've been training teachers. Yeah. Oh, sorry.
Yes, I was talking about the Indian subcontinent, and I'm so proud that you have it, and we should ape it. Why not? We should. Now, the other thing is, when it comes to classical dance, I learned Kathak. Kathak means, it comes from the word story, katha, and it tells story of past, present, and future. So, what I learned in the temples, and then the dancer came to the Mughal court, so I learned about Urdu, Farsi, Persian, Sanskrit, Avdi, all these languages I learned in the dance form itself. And then I came to the modern day auditorium where the British came, and I also do a ghazal in English. And now I'm choreographing a chal. Chal is the way you walk, of a woman who's dressed in an Indian outfit with a lehenga. How would she walk? How would a woman walk in a sari? How would she walk in a skirt? How would she walk in a abaya? And how would perhaps someone walk on Mars? So what I'm trying to say is that the dance form itself opens doors to so many other subjects and experiences. It is atmas, that's a swad. The way you experience culture through the performing arts is something that should be non-negotiable and mandatory for all as global citizens.
So, if I had a magic wand, I would wish for more time. Thank you very much for your very insightful viewpoints, knowledge, and your experience that you bring to such an important aspect of our everyday lives and also beyond that. I think we have an excellent days here, so I please invite all of you to give them a big round of applause. We have our chief guest, His Excellency Vidul Kumarji, His Excellency, the former Swiss Ambassador, Mr. Philip Welty, Dr. Johannes Belz, the Deputy Director and Curator Extraordinaire at Museum Riedberg, Acharya Vidya Bhaskarji from the Omkarananda Ashram, Mr. Jean-Philippe Pinto, Mayor of Folketsville, Dr. Pali Chandra, International Kathak Exponent, and Mr. Damodar Dasji from the President of the ISKCON. So please give a big round of applause. I would like to invite your Ambassador Excellency to felicitate the panelists. We will start left to right. First, Mr. Damodar Prasad Prabhuji, President of the ISKCON Temple. Thank you very much. Next, to Acharya Vidya Bhaskarji from the Omkarananda Ashram. Next, Your Excellency, the former Swiss Ambassador to India and Iran, Mr. Philip Welty. Next, to Dr. Johannes Belz, Deputy Director and Curator at the Museum Riedberg. Next, Mr. Jean-Philippe Pinto, Mayor of Folketsville. Thank you very much. And to Dr. Pali Chandra, an international Kathak exponent extraordinaire. And finally, I would like to...
Now the President of SIFAA, Mr. Aniruddhan, would like to present a memento to our ambassador.
Would maybe take a quick group picture and then request our esteemed panelists to take seat in the first row among the audience to enjoy our last highlight of today. Kindly request our esteemed panelists to take seat among the audience. Thank you very much, everyone.
Maybe allow them to an extra audience member.